Hi everyone, welcome to Torah on Demand. I'm Rabbi Yael Ridberg. Earlier this week I got into it online with some folks who seem to prefer simplistic memes about Israel and Gaza over heartbreak both for Israeli Jews and Palestinians, as if one cannot be heartbroken for both groups at the same time. Unfortunately, this dust-up took place on the pages of a Christian clergy member with whom I once stood in solidarity around many issues of common concern. But since October 7th, she has been pretty silent on the devastation in Israel, the hostages, the sexual violence, and the rise in anti-Semitism. It got pretty ugly with one of her followers who resorted to calling me names, accusing me of all kinds of things, and laughing in the face of my genuine attempt to call him in, not out. Of course, it's far easier to post some kind of flat accusatory generalization against Israel that you did not write, that treats a soundbite like truth and clicks and shares like a revolution. But this inclination has begun to feel like a very contagious disease, not a mild ailment that to be dismissed with 2 Advil. In ancient times, when a disease appeared on the skin, experts, the priests, were called in to determine if it was a harmless surface reaction or a symptom of a contagious, dangerous illness taking root in a body already unwell. This week's Torah portion of Tazria begins a biblical focus on such contagion, isolation, and quarantine. Every person was responsible for their own health, scrutinizing bodily changes and, when necessary, asking the priest to assess the situation. Such occurrences were an expected part of communal life. Sarat, the disease, was a highly contagious, scaly affection that could occur on the skin, in clothing, and even in the stones of a house. The mitzvah was in a temporary state of ritual impurity, requiring separation from the community until the illness abated, and an offering was made to rejoin the community. Sarat could happen to anyone and was not considered terminal. The illness was understood as a spiritual ailment, but not a medical or even moral one. The priest would get close and look very carefully. If he perceived it to be no more than a surface indicator, this case was dismissed. But if the priest determined that the affliction was deeper than skin, then and only then was the person declared tameh, impure, contaminated, unwell. Maimonides notes that the priest had to look very closely and carefully to determine just how deep the blemish reached beneath the surface. Was it just a rash, or was it a life-altering affliction? How deeply embedded was the illness in the system? Was it something one could live with, or something that would kill if untreated? The Torah text is silent on the why of the fungus, but its inclusion in the Torah seems to normalize it. Only later in the book of Numbers, when Miriam is afflicted with the same Sarat after criticizing Moses, did the rabbis assign the cause negative speech, which in and of itself is also a contagion that can infiltrate the very bedrock of the community. That's kind of how I felt this week with this guy online. But after blocking his angry, trolling respondent on Facebook, I started to wonder about the depth of his comments and how he could be so hateful towards someone, me, whom he didn't even know, when literally no one else on the page challenged his rhetoric. I started to worry about how widespread his sentiments might be, how contagious such thinking is, and how memes may be surface reflections, but they might be very deep messages held by many people, and that is worrisome. A person afflicted with Sarat had to proclaim him or herself to be infected. The person had to rend their garments, uncover their head, cover the mouth, and call out, tameh, tameh, impure, impure. The person had to dwell apart from the community and, until the disease disappeared, couldn't return. The priest would then return them when it was determined they could. Embedded in these verses is a communal imperative to care for others. According to the Talmud, one calls out the infected status not only to warn others of the contagion, but also to elicit compassion and prayers on one's behalf. I thought that by responding to this critic online with care and even generosity of spirit, I might break through his affliction, and maybe he might see that there were other ways to engage besides calling me a genocide apologist and someone else a baby killer, literally. But that was not to be, and I am left with the uneasy feeling that such a disease will only deepen into the bedrock of our community. In our world, there's no longer one person, a priest, who determines how serious the sickness is in our society. Instead, there are thousands of competing voices, all fighting for their narrative to be heard. It's easy in all the noise to feel lost. But if each of us could be like the priests of old, charged with the mission to differentiate between a surface affliction or something more deeply rooted and potentially life-threatening, wouldn't that make a difference in our ability to hold two truths and two communities in heartbreak at the same time? Who we listen to and what they say ultimately matters very much to the health and well-being of our society. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.